What did I do?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, you won.
For what?
Yeah.
Oh, the other. Are you still worried? You still bothered by that?
Okay, we ready? So I will call to order the work session for Oregon City Commission for Tuesday, November 7th, 2017. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Ide? Here. Commissioner Shaw?
Here.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Here.
Commissioner Mengelberg? Here. Mayor Holliday?
Here. Future agenda items.
None.
I will say that I would like Mr. Conkle and Ms. Turway to set up a time either in a work session or in a general meeting for us to talk about the lot averaging issue.
Certainly.
Okay?
I would support that.
I would definitely support it. I was going to introduce it myself. In fact, I didn't know how to give direction to staff. I think it's an exigent issue that needs to be addressed quickly. And I think there's some history there that I've researched as of today that will shed some light on why it does have to be. And I'm all for moving forward as fast as we can. Obviously, you know it's an emotional issue with the community. And I'd like to at least prove that we've examined it to everyone's satisfaction. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll move on to our discussion items tonight. 17-586, Oregon City Homeless Solutions Coalition presentation.
Okay.
Commissioner Ide and Mayor Fowler.
Yeah. Oh, there's the clicker. There's the clicker.
All
You
right.
want to run the clicker?
Forward, back.
Mayor Holliday and members of the commission, Dan Fowler, and along here with
Nancy, aye.
Yes. It's a real pleasure to come before you tonight. And talk about the homeless issue in our community and in particular the Oregon City Homeless Solutions Coalition. It's a group that's been working for a little over a year now and to trying to take a serious look at the homeless issue and what realistically can be done and how we can plan for the future to even do something greater. And there's a wonderful group of people working on it, and I want to give you a little background. I'm not very good at this. I want to maybe start off by just saying a little story, and I've said this a couple times with Nancy, but the first time that Nancy and I actually talked about this was after a meeting, not this meeting, but at a meeting that we attended. I can't remember what meeting. I think it was some meeting. And she said, hey, Dan, can I talk to you about, she knew she was going to become a new city commissioner. And she said, can I talk to you about the three issues I really hope to work on in our community? I said, yeah, great. You know, what is it? And to be honest with you, I can't remember the other two, but the very first one out of her mouth was the homeless issue for the community. And I said, wow. I said, I've been working on kind of noodling on some ideas in that area and trying to see if there isn't something that I could help facilitate or work with people to facilitate. And so we just started teaming up right then. And meeting, coming together, and the very first meeting community-wide, and you can see there's an array of people there from the community, from our downtown association, some McLaughlin neighborhood members. Tony is there, city manager, the city is represented, Brian is there, Nancy's there. People from Providence Hospital were there, some of the pastors in the community were there. So there's quite an array of people.
Vahid.
And Vahid from the county, Clackamas County was there. So just a beginning talking point. And what we tried to create was a safe place of listening. Because on this issue, you'll have people that will say the homeless issue should just, the sooner they could leave and be out of our community, the better. And you've got people on the other end of the spectrum saying, hey, we just need to do anything and everything we can for them. And we recognize that. So what we really wanted to create was a place where people could really be heard and really talk and work for solutions to that. So it really, along the way, since last October, we did what I call the sponge phase. It's a phase of anything when you don't know what you don't know. And so you're a dry sponge. And what you do is you soak up information. So we really started learning about what other communities were doing, what was working, what wasn't working, what would maybe work in our community. So we had speakers come in from Salem, from Portland, from many, many places. And we did a lot of listening to try to get something right. Then along the way, we hold a steering committee. We now have a steering committee, and we hold a steering committee every month, and we hold a community meeting every other month?
About quarter.
Every third month. And this was a community meeting, and we have our meetings at the Willamette Falls Education Center down on Washington Street. And this, you can tell, I mean, this isn't everybody, but there's a lot of people involved in this group. And this was a presentation by the people from Oregon City High School, I believe, on what the school system and how they deal with the homeless population in the youth sector. And maybe later we'll say maybe another piece of that came out of another community meeting that's pretty exciting, and there's actually some work going on. Here again, this talks about the different areas in our community that people are involved. We have the faith-based organizations, a number of churches are involved. Law enforcement is after there, the city and the county are there. We actually have a former homeless people on our community and on the steering committee. And that was something that early on, it really challenged us when one day someone said to me, well, do you have any homeless or former homeless people on your committee? And I just said, wow. No. And we went to the Father's Heart, talked to Terry at the time, and Robin is here tonight from Father's Heart, and said, can you put the word out either in your former homeless people or current homeless people, and would some people commit to being on a group with us and work towards solutions? And they've been invaluable in really asking, what do you guys need? I mean, we can think all day long what we think the solutions are, but when you get right down with the former homeless or homeless and ask them what they need, and one of the biggest things was restrooms. And hats off to the police department, for the Art of Potty program that went through. That was one of the greatest needs that they talked about, is just where can we go to the restroom? Because a lot of them, they can't afford to be a customer. So they can go into a restaurant or into a business, as typically those restrooms are reserved for a paying customer. And so that's a fabulous program that's been started, and hats off to them. Education, we have the school and the college both there. We've had presentations by the workforce people and the people at the community college on how we can affect that homelessness, and of course, business is represented, and healthcare. This is really an issue, and we've seen, I'm sure, the headlines where the various hospital organizations have supported the homeless in Portland, and through some very major gifts to help provide housing for them. And it really is, the more we've learned about the homeless situation, it really is a community health issue. Not only for the people that are homeless, and they're some of the biggest users of the emergency rooms at the hospital, but also for the general public through just sanitation and disease. You want to really make sure that we're trying to keep our community safe, but also safe from a health standard. And I will say that's why Providence has really been at the table. They have helped with facilitators, they've helped with people that are doing strategic planning with us, and now working on business plans. So they've really been a big partner in it. All that's been provided at no charge to this. We have no budget, we have no anything. This has all been a 100% volunteer effort. And then of course the neighborhoods are involved. So, and I mentioned we have an executive committee, and then we have a steering committee. The executive committee, we meet at least monthly, sometimes more than once a month. And the steering committee meets monthly, and then our community groups meet quarterly. And you want to take it from there? And
Sure.
I'll chime in if there's anything else.
Okay.
Yeah.
He pretty much just said what this one says,
Yes, sir.
where we meet, and the steering committee and the community meetings are quite frequent. We've actually had 5 community meetings since we started and 11 steering committee meetings. So we've done a lot of talking and learning. So why do we do what we do? The 2 folks on the left, that's Ed and Mary's in the middle. They're both formerly homeless people. Ed was on the street for 25 years as a drug addict, is now healthy and working and a
as a
new father.
father.
And, he's stable and, he had a helping hand along the way.
Yeah.
And the same with Mary. And I'm sure that, by the way, I want to introduce Robin Schmidt. She's the director of the Father's Heart. And we have Rory Dunneback, you're going to hear from in a minute. He's working on our business plan.
Yep.
And thanks for coming, Mike
Yeah,
Day,
Mike.
Officer Day.
Who did a great
And-
job.
Okay, glad you're here.
Yeah.
And that's it. And so this is why we do what we do, to give people the helping hand, to help them get off the street and into services so that they can obtain sustainable living and independent living as well. There was a homeless count, as you are very much aware. The prevalence of homelessness across Clackamas County, Oregon City was at the top. Lots of reasons why that could be. People speculate on that a lot, but they are here. And one thing that you may not know about this is if there's a number in Oregon City, if there's one person in Oregon City, it's because they said that they're from Oregon City. The people from Molalla or Estacada, Canby, those people identified that city as their home, and so that's why they got that number on there. So, we have a job to do, and I think this kind of shows a little bit. And if we can remember that each number is a person with a life and, hopes and dreams, it kind of helps to motivate. I'm just going to briefly go through this. The homeless point-in-time count done in January is conducted by Clackamas County every 2 years, and HUD requires the count for purposes of funding distribution. And the numbers this year were higher than in 2015, and we'll get into that a little bit later. 2,200 homeless individuals were identified, 746 are unsheltered, including 379 under age 18. And just as a side comment, there are over 300 homeless students at Oregon City High School that their staff works with on a daily basis to help them.
What's the difference between unsheltered and homeless?
Unsheltered is someone that does not have a place to stay at night. And homeless might be someone that's doing some couch surfing, or maybe they, once in a while can go here or there.
Living in their car. They live in a car, they're in a hotel room, or they're visiting, staying friend to friend. A lot of students are in that mode. They're, we have the visible homeless, I say, and I don't mean that in any derogatory way. But a lot of the students we don't see because of that. They are somewhere, they're just not truly in a permanent home. Okay. And so later on we'll describe maybe the Love Inc. connection.
Okay, I'll let you do that.
Yeah.
157 housed in short-term or transitional shelters, and 1,295 unstably housed, including 910 children, and 85 veterans, of which we learned later that the city of Portland, their group that's similar to ours is helping the veterans a lot there. So Clackamas County right now is working on some pods, as you all know, so that we are working in that area. Where were the increases? There they are.
Yeah.
Just take a look at them. Unsheltered, children, chronically homeless, and veterans. And it's often heard, this is the first time I've ever been homeless. And some of those reasons are, rent, high rents, people being evicted because of that. They've always been able to make it, and they can't anymore because of the situation with rent. And out of all of this, 3 major partners have emerged, and we're calling the city a partner at this point. But the City of Oregon City has stepped up and hired a homeless liaison officer and provided 2 outdoor restrooms. And I understand those restrooms are very successful and doing a really good job from what I'm hearing. People, they're using them, and I believe there's even someone who's guarding one.
There is.
Which is pretty cool.
It's amazing, yeah.
And then Clackamas County provides staff participation on the coalition, and he brings us expertise on data and policy. And that's Vahid Brown. He's the housing policy coordinator. He's been here a couple times with us.
Yeah.
And then Providence Hospital has led the steering committee through strategic planning and visioning process. And those folks are Jennifer Vernum, the master change facilitator, Kathleen Schwartz in project management, and Tiffany Gillespie is the executive director at Providence Foundation, and she's just been invaluable with her input.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot more other smaller organizations in Oregon City that have been attending all the meetings, and we're all partnering with one another and sharing information. So that's been really valuable.
So just as an aside, Tony and I and Brian Shaw met with Clackamas Fire District 1 today. We typically have a once every 6 month get together to find out what's going on. And we told them, actually Brian, Commissioner Shaw told them about your group, and they've committed to sending one of their people to come attend this.
Perfect.
That's great. I'll get in touch with them.
They actually have a gal that kind of does this thing right now, and she'll fit right into this. So
Very
we're
good.
going
That's
to
excellent.
get her the next meeting. So
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah.
So during the last several months, like Dan said, we've been absorbing information, and this is an exercise where Jennifer and Kathleen took us through, just trying to envision what solutions could look like. And here we are, just in the midst of some of our exercises.
Creative brainstorming.
Yeah. And here are some of the approaches included: a gallery walk, brainstorming, art projects, listening, and reflection.
which one was Chief Bands?
We did not put our names on it.
The one where he couldn't color between the lines.
But these were very helpful, especially when, we all did them separately, and then to compare them at the end. It was all really interesting how everybody had very
Yeah.
similar ideas for solutions. So.
Yeah.
And the result of all that was our vision statement, which is compassionate and respectful solutions to homelessness through community partnerships. And from that, our core values were formed, which are compassion, respect, community, and partnerships. So then in June, we invited Marc Jolin. He's the director of the Joint Office of Homeless Services for Multnomah County, to come and speak to us, because 2 years earlier, he had started an organization called A Home for Everyone. And the more he talked about how they started, it was like, that's exactly what's happening with our coalition. And so he just went on and on about how they're organized, and then 2 years later, where they're at. And so the first year, they did basically the same thing that we're doing. We're just trying to get organized and figure out who we are and what we are and why we're doing what we're doing. And these were the highlights of his hour-long presentation.
Yeah.
Governance structure is paramount. You need to know who is in charge, and you need to know who's going to pay the bills when you have money.
Yeah.
Again, the Home for Everyone started 2 years ago, similar to our beginnings, and the first year consisted of planning in their case too. Collaboration across stakeholder groups to get the best resources available was paramount for them, very important. What they did was the City of Portland and Multnomah County joined together by IGA to form the Joint Office for Homeless Services. And then Marc Jolin is now the director of that. So A Home for Everyone still exists. In fact, they're the ones who are the brain of everything, because they still have all those many partners together. But then the money, they basically tell the joint office what to do, and then they execute. this is just an example. They opened 720 shelter beds in the last year, including services to transition all those folks to a better living situation. So that's the key part right there. I mean, you can provide housing, but then if you don't provide help to help get them into independent living, you're just kind of wasting your money and time. So the single biggest challenge that he said was the lack of affordable housing. And I think we all are aware of that in this area too. So other business that we're doing, in front of you, I gave you a charter that we developed last spring. And the charter is complete. It's a guiding document for us for the coalition operations. And we intend to do what we're doing tonight in other cities and agencies. We just want to go to those cities to seek their recognition and then to coordinate efforts or to just share what we're doing so they can potentially do something similar in their city. We have a business plan that's in draft form, and Rory's going to talk about that in just a second. And what's exciting is we are hopefully about to enlist an administrator to assist with collaboration among our partners and just do some admin work. There are multiple amounts of information and documents that we are creating, and we just need some help. And so we're seeking some financial contributions along the line too. But tonight we are mostly interested in the City Commission considering formally recognizing the Oregon City Homeless Solutions Coalition by resolution or other matter at this point. Another goal of the coalition is to make immediate, visible impact through work groups. And some of those work groups, oh wait, let me go back to this first. Here's the charter. I just put up the whereases on there. We don't need to go through all those, but it's a charter that we went through word by word to try to make sure that we have a means to make decisions and know what our vision is and our purpose and so forth. So that is yours to keep. But these are our work groups that we're working on. At our last community meeting, these are the 5 main ones that we want to address first. The top 2 are immediate. In fact, tomorrow at our steering committee meeting, we'll be talking about warming shelters and housing for some of those homeless students. We're going to get work groups together along with a couple of volunteers from the Providence Health Foundation to come in, and they're going to help lead us with that. So that's very exciting.
And let me just expand on one thing that's happened. The last community meeting, we had some work groups. We had breakout sessions on each one of these, and those are furthering because we're really trying to take 2 tracks. One is we're really planning for the future. Really, how could services be delivered? How could be better? How can we really affect the homeless in a bigger long-term way? But at the same time we're doing that, we know there are immediate issues, immediate needs, as important as restrooms, or as important as warming shelters, or as important as youth and students. So we have these 2 tracks going on. And what was exciting to see at the last community meeting, and I sat at the table, I don't know if Brian was on the table, but I sat at the table where we were talking about the student population. And here were 2 women who we had talked to months before, and they'd been invited. They're coming to the meetings. And we had from a nonprofit called Love, Inc. And then we had the lady from the high school who's in charge of the homeless student population of the high school. So here all these people are meeting, and the Love, Inc. people are talking about what they do. And what they do is they interview people within the community who are willing to open their home to students. And they pre-qualify them, and they build a database, they build a list of people, and some are in churches throughout the community or community members that have that compassion in their lives to say, I want to help a student. And it might be a junior or senior whose parents are gone, or they want to finish their school here, or whatever the situation might be. But what then they empower the student by, they get to interview at least 3 homes to choose from to where they will be. And then they actually write up a rental agreement between the 2, And the pay is to complete school. That's the payment for the rent, is that they have to stay in school. So what's exciting to me is, both those parties at this meeting were really excited about furthering that connection, because the people at the school have the need, they have the students, and the people in Love Inc. have the homes or are getting in the community to qualify the homes.
So what about the issues surrounding, being home on time and drug and alcohol use and other kinds of things? Is that addressed in the quote rental agreement?
Oh, I'm sure it is. Yeah, there's an agreement from the students' end and the home end that they have to both adhere to. And so.
I had those problems with my own kids, so,
Right. Right. Yeah. And I know that this isn't brand new. This has been done in other communities, and they're coming here to our community saying, hey, we could be a piece of help. So those are the kind of things that are being worked on, that are really coming together.
But the key thing there, Dan, too, is that those kids have now a rental history.
Yeah.
So when they leave and go to college stuff, now they have something to show a landlord that says, hey, I've rented before,
Yeah,
and I did well, and then it's going to
Exactly.
be a leg up for them in
Exactly.
the future.
So, but I just wanted to give you a flavor for what was going on. Food distribution, there's a lot of the churches are doing that. And yeah, we're trying to say, hey, who's doing what, when, and where? So it's a little more coordinated. And we're not, as the Oregon State Homeless Solutions Coalition, we're not coming in trying to tell anybody what to do. We're trying to find out what people are doing and help that get coordinated, or help that become more as efficient as it can. And we're really a connector. There's so many agencies that didn't know each other that now do. Mm-hmm. And that's what's exciting to that. So anyway.
It's one of our core values,
Yeah. Yeah.
Community and partnership.
Yeah.
So those are things we're going to be working on in the near future. The first two are the very near future,
Yeah.
beginning tomorrow.
Yep.
And we're going to begin getting them together as teams. Okay, so Rory, you're up. Yep.
Thanks, Nancy. Thanks, everyone, for having me. My name is Rory Dunnebeck, and I've donated my time to the organization because I just love what they do. But my expertise is in business planning and strategy. I formerly worked with the folks at Providence, and that's how I found out about the project, and I know Dan. And I just love hearing the stories, but I've come up with the idea of saying, how do we formalize the great work that's going on and take it to the next step? And we've showed you the vision. And we took a look at the pictures that we drew on the wall, and you saw sort of some structures, buildings, needs, resources, things that we now know that we want to have, but we have no idea how to get them. So we started to put some thought into, okay, if we had X, Y, and Z, this is what we'd need, this is how much it would cost. So I've taken a strategic plan that I've done in the past for many businesses that I've set up, and I've started to work through this with the team. And so far, we've gotten through at least a draft phase of knowing and thinking about what we could have, and it's not necessarily in stone. It's certainly an adaptable, a fluid model as we look at this challenge. It's there's no one thing that's going to solve any of this, and so as we continue on this path and develop this business plan, and we can take it to some of our community partners and investors and come up with some really innovative ideas on how we can make a difference for the folks. But I put a few bullet points to think about. We've started the formal planning process. We've got some numbers down. We've got some Excel spreadsheets that we're using to kind of model things out in terms of who would we hire, how would we do this, where would they work, what do they need to do the job, what are they going to do. So we've taken some of the great ideas already and gone to the next step. So this is a document that I just showed you the title page here, but as we progress and look, and we're looking to the beginning first quarter of next year to have this more complete. And so then we'll have a really good idea of what we need and who we can take it to in terms of our community partners. So we just wanted to share with you that we're not stopping with what we have so far. And we've kind of taken a look at a 5-year plan. Now, we don't necessarily think 5 years is enough, but it's a great way to start, and it's really tangible, and so I use 5 years as a kind of a way to go. But they shared with you Marc Jolin's ideas and what he's been able to accomplish in the first 2 years, and you know, we want to put a structure around this, this group. Does it have to be a nonprofit? Well, no, it doesn't. But, you know, that's sort of the way kind of people think about it, and you're organized, and you have an executive director, and that person can help you coordinate and communicate and take the resources that we have and expand on what we've already done and have, you know, enhanced results. We want to monitor those results. We want to collect the data so we know when changes are actually leading to improvements. And the things that we've done, you know, aren't just out there. We don't know about them. So, you know, these are some of the ideas about what would the organization actually look like if it was formalized, and what could we do with that information. I think is endless. But more formal, you know, in the 3 to 5 year idea, we came up with, you know, if you look back on those pictures, and I'm not going to go back through the slides, but you know, everyone kind of came up with this idea of what if we had one place where the homeless could go and get all these resources from the county, from the city, health-wise, mental health-wise. And we thought to ourselves, well, you know, this is kind of an interesting idea, and you know, they've come up with some other models in some other cities across America. This is not anything new, but this is something that could be done in a variety of different ways. And we thought about, you know, how do you normalize the idea of having the community and the homeless at one place? You know, you look at it, the idea in Hollywood where Panera Cares was for a long time. It's like, okay, you think about that's kind of a community, private-public partnership idea of, you know, bringing people in the same, you know, same complex. And so we started to think about, well, if we build it, you know, what would it look like? And so we started to kind of think about this, the work that's going on at the Father's Heart, and saying, okay, what if we expanded on that and gave them the resource they need? And we got a new building, and we had all these things that were there with the mental health services, and maybe it's a couple floors worth of, you know, an operation there, and they can triage what they need and get everybody there who's able to provide it. So of course that's visionary, right? There's not everybody in the community is, you know, understands that that's exactly what's going to go on. So as we think about, you know, how do we accomplish this vision, and is it the right vision? But these are the conversations that we're set out to have, and we're thinking about and formalizing. So those are some of the ideas about why the business plan, what we're going to do with it, and how to achieve our goals. So, yeah. That essentially takes us to the next step. So I talked a little bit about some of these here. You can see some of the dates here. We're working immediately about our work groups. We want to finalize the business plan really in Q1 of next year, and then start to implement it, you know, as soon as we can. You know, if we can find some more funding to expand our plans, great. You know, we're going to continue to do our work with or without the funding. The work's not going to stop, so that's the good news. But, you know, how do we take it to the next level? We want to thank you. We do have a Facebook page for Community Partnership. If you have a chance, please check that out if you haven't already. There's some great stories about all the great work going on here. And we just want to open it up to questions and thoughts that you may have while we're here. Yeah, please. You want your chair back?
Okay.
So why don't you let her sit down? Yeah.
Request to speak.
I just wanted to make one more comment about the role of cities versus the role of counties. And, you know, I fully understand that local governments, cities generally don't have health departments and, you know, health services like a county has its health and human and housing services, big department and everything related. And so, you know, the City of Oregon City invested in the homeless liaison and, you know, the porta potties and so forth, and is doing things to address some of the impacts to homelessness in Oregon City. And I just wanted to point out that, you know, we are aware of the different roles that there are, but at the same time, there are impacts within the city that we as a commission, you know, need to address as well. So, as well as it is all happening within our city. So those are just a couple comments that I wanted to make about that. But we really appreciate your time and hearing us, and would love to have you consider formally recognizing us as an organization rising up in Oregon City to be reckoned with.
Is there any questions?
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Well, I have to admire the mission. I admire the mission statement. It was very well, clearly and concisely stated. The core values to me are the basis of all human relationships, and they should be extended to all groups. I think everyone in this room recognizes the causes of homelessness are many and varied.
Yeah.
From as simple as rents have gotten prohibitive to mental illness, drug abuse, The challenges can be overwhelming, and the group has not stepped away from those. We see some successful stories, and I'm pleased with those. And you got people that are willing and capable of seeking help and are receptive to it. There are going to be more difficult cases that are unwilling, they're unable for whatever reason, and they to seek or welcome help. And I think those may be the most challenging. I also think that we have to strike a balance between providing these services and honoring our responsibility, especially to those neighborhoods most affected. And specifically, those neighborhoods are Two Rivers, McLaughlin, and downtown. And my hope is that by the provision of these services, those other manifestations, the problems these people experience will be minimized. I think going forward, there's been criticisms of some organizations like the United Fund, where too much money is spent on the administration. And my advice would be, I'd like to see a focus on deliverables. What do we want to give? What's the mission, and how do we maximize the contribution there? And that a high percentage of the contribution goes to the target group. So those are just observations. I'm actually just stole my thought about, shouldn't we form a 501c3? Because at least for now, those will be tax-deductible contributions, So, and it's not hard. I mean, if I can do it, and I have done it, it's not that difficult. So a good presentation, thank you.
Thanks for your words.
Commissioner Megaberg.
Along those same lines, in the interim, before you have a 501c3 formed, there might be a local nonprofit organization that you could partner with that could be that umbrella organization that could accept grant funds for you or accept contributions from the community that would like to help.
That's a good idea.
And it might be good to publicize opportunities for how the community could support the effort, either with their time or their money or resources, if they would like to, so that your pie is bigger than just the organizations that you're working with. But it's great work, and I'm really excited to see where this goes.
And even though I'm not on Facebook, one of those ways to publicize it is right there, Facebook, whatever.com, so whatever that
You dinosaur, you're not on Facebook?
Get on it. No, I'm not on Facebook.
I'm trying to convince him.
So,
All the friend requests you would get?
as a follow-up to Commissioner Megaberg's statement, when we had the issue with the landslide, the Rotary actually stepped in and accepted donations for us, and they have the whole financial organization already set up. So you might talk to David Wimmer about that.
That's a great idea.
Commissioner Shaw, you had anything?
No, it's just interesting, and I know people are getting tired of hearing me say this, but
Never.
When we talk about this homeless issue, everybody thinks about the people under the bridge and what they're seeing out there and what Officer Day's is seeing all the time and stuff, but that's only about 1/3 of the homeless people. When they did the homeless count, the largest segment is women and children. Number 2 is people with jobs, no place to live. And down here is the people that is where we're having to spend all of our resources at. So, the top 2 seem fairly easy to do. We just have to provide housing. So that's one part of this homeless coalition. It's not only is providing, meals and places to sleep and Father's Heart and stuff, but if we can keep our affordable housing going, that's going to take care of a majority of the homeless people. So that's all I got.
Yeah, I was able to, I went on my own to go down to New Orleans to the National Affordable Housing Conference this year, and learned a lot and have some really good connections with people. It was sponsored through the Urban Land Institute, and their main headquarters in Seattle. So those are people that we should definitely be connecting with.
Have you spoken to Rob Justice? Okay. Just want to make sure you're connected with him.
Well, in addition, the city's code includes accessory dwelling unit code. And if, apparently it hasn't really been used that much in the city, is that right? But, you know, if that was something that, I mean, I could just see this coalition getting a hold of that and putting it out there and marketing it and encouraging people to do that. The city of Portland did that, and they actually said that they would pay, if someone wanted to house a homeless person for 5 years, that they would provide the ADU, and then they could have it at the end of the 5 years. And they had what, how many was it, like 1,500 applications within a very short period of time. So, you know, if you just kind of light fires under people in a certain way, you know, you might instantly be able to have all kinds of people housed. So there's just a lot of ideas out there, and it's our job to find those and implement them.
Well, and I want to just give Commissioner Shaw some credit and some ado, because he's been a champion on the committee for the affordable housing, and, you know, really has, I mean, I've sat in some meetings with him where he's really stood up and said, hey, this is an important piece of our community, and let's keep it here, you know, and have a balance, but keep it here, and it's critical. And your affordable housing almost could be called workforce housing. I mean, you know, if we're gonna, because if we're really gonna take this segment, the folks that are homeless, if we talk about getting them a home, you gotta also help them get some work. And that's one of the key pieces in talking when the people came in from workforce. It was, they are ready, willing, and able to help anyone in that homeless community for job training and job transition and all that. And so there's a combination of things going on, but getting affordable housing, getting full assessment, obviously getting the assessment of the person and getting their needs met so they can re-enter those things, and then re-enter that workforce and job training so they have a job and a home. And that's, you know, there's that continuum that we need to work on. And so there's a big job ahead of us, but we've got a great group working on it. So.
Well, thanks for the presentation. Thanks for all your hard work.
Yeah,
Appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Next up, we have 17,579, adjustments to the Commission Policy 1-3 public meetings. Ms. Riggs.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Each year we bring forward the calendar for the next year's meetings and also the enhancement grant meeting, the mid-biennium goal update retreat, and usually budget, but this year we don't have a budget since it's on a 2-year budget. So staff asks that you take a look at the draft 2018 meeting schedule and voice any conflicts or concerns tonight that you might have. And just note that the July 4th for 2018 falls on a Wednesday of our regularly scheduled meetings. And I've moved that to Thursday, July 5th. And then the mid-year or mid-biennium goals update is currently scheduled for January 27th, 2018, which is a Saturday. And then the enhancement grant committee meeting is currently scheduled for June 5th, 2018. So if there's no comments, questions, concerns, conflicts, changes, we can move on to the next agenda item.
Just give me 1 second.
Okay.
I gotta look at something.
I will be gone one work session, but it doesn't need to change for me.
Well, I can do this offline with you.
Okay.
There may be a conflict for me on the mid-biennium goals update. Okay, so moving on to 15,579, again, policy 1.3.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Tonight, I'm bringing forward a Commission Policy 1-3. It's the public meeting policy that you currently have. And there are some proposed changes that I would like to take a look. One change was brought forward by Mayor Holliday, making a request to limit the time that a meeting, any city meeting, boards, committees, commission meetings would get over, so that in the past, we've had some very, very late night meetings, and the commission understands that, as they have changed their rules of procedure to reflect not to go past 10 o'clock unless there's a unanimous agreement among the members that are in attendance that night to extend it to no later than 11 p.m. And the Mayor Holliday would like to see that happen for the rest of the boards and committees. So Planning Commission, HRB, NRC, Natural Resources Committee, Historic Review Board, CIC, any of the boards and committees that fall under the commission's perspective there. And then the next change is something that I'm bringing forward, and that's a change of going from summary minutes to action minutes. Minutes in general has been a topic that the city has discussed for a long time, and the laws have changed over the years on what is acceptable minutes. So the change from summary to action minutes is, I feel, something that will help us catch up a little bit on some backlog that we have. And we've had some citizens who have even come forward to the city commission mentioning that there's a backlog on our minutes and it's hard for us to keep up. With action minutes, the turnaround time would be a lot quicker.
So you want to explain the difference between the two for those of us who
Sure.
understand?
So first of all, I just want to go through really quick. I'll start out with what are the problems that we're trying to solve, and that usually is something that people ask about when you try to bring changes forward. And so the changes for the meetings lasting pretty late, it's hard for people to make sound decisions or to think clearly when a meeting goes too late. The amount of staff time and that's taken up by that late night meeting and then having to turn around and come to work the next day. A lot of the staff boards and committee meetings are under a union contract. So therefore, they either have to flex their time. It's hard to pay overtime for something like that. So then they wouldn't be there during the 8 to 5 hours. And that takes away from being able to help out in their office with others. And then also the money and resources that go into this, and both the minutes piece and the meetings lasting late, the staff time, money, resources, obviously lack of minutes, backlog, and delay, are some of the problems that we're trying to solve. So let's go ahead and discuss minutes for a few minutes, because it's important to understand that there are various options for minutes. Some governing bodies choose to have audio recordings, video recordings, and/or written minutes. There's no specific requirement in the law that says you have to have this, as far as if you have to have an actual recording, audio, video, or if you have to have an actual minute. It's your choice if you want one or the other or both. And here it describes, what are verbatim minutes, what are action minutes, and then what I'm calling hybrid summary minutes. Currently, we do hybrid summary minutes, but we also keep our videos accessible to the public, and we have some audio recordings as well that could be requested. The law does put in place, what it does require is these items that are listed here that have to be included in the minutes, no matter if it's a recording, an audio, video, or written minutes. So this is under Oregon Revised Statute 192.65, Section 1, 650, Section 1, sorry. And it specifically lists the items that need to be in minutes. And with action minutes, this is exactly what would be listed in the minutes. With summary minutes, you'll get a little bit more with what was the discussion, and oftentimes, which I'll go into here in the next couple slides for a pro and con, it can lead to someone's actual opinion who's transcribing the minutes being displayed in those minutes. But for minute preparation, as far as like when you have to have them prepared after a meeting. There's not a real set time for that either. It just says in a reasonable amount of time. So don't get me wrong, we're not doing something illegal by not having them immediately after the next meeting. It's just that it's nice to have stuff available to the public as soon as you can possibly have it available. And we do have the recorded video recordings up within the very next day or a couple of days. Sometimes the latest is a week usually of most meetings, but the minutes, they start to lag behind. And with this, it shows the pros and cons. Like I said, the turnaround time would be a lot quicker, still documenting the decisions that need to be made. We're still in compliance with the law. A con could be that the details or the opinions are coming from the transcriptionist who's reviewing the videos or transcribing the meeting could be portrayed one way, and someone else's opinion could think that it should be portrayed a different way. As much as you try to stay neutral in transcribing, that doesn't always occur. So it's hard to put out summary minutes that are very neutral. What is needed from you tonight is a discussion, some questions, feedback, and then consensus to bring forward a final version of this policy change to a future commission meeting. And just to be, I put in the commission packet, a red-lined version, and then a clean-line version, and I didn't spell out in the staff report every single nitty-gritty change that was made to the policy in the red-line version. There was a little bit of some cleanup that I also did. You know, we missed a definition in there that was copied from the state that I added in there. There was a wrong definition then there that I changed. So, I mean, we did a little bit of cleanup, but the two main items that I'm bringing forward to you tonight are the requirement of all city boards, committees, and commissions to have a end time at 10 p.m. or extended no later than 11 p.m. with the consensus of the members that are available that night.
Not a consensus,
a unanimous agreement. Yes, you're right. To extend it no later than 11 p.m. so that none of our meetings would last longer than 11 p.m. And then also changing from summary minutes to action minutes. Oh, and sorry, one more piece about the minutes. I forgot to mention that we have also talked about going away from minutes altogether and just keeping our videos as our minutes. And from what I've discussed with other jurisdictions, there are other jurisdictions that are doing that. West Lynn is one of them. And they've come to find out that housing and maintaining those videos is not very cost effective, and it costs them a lot more money and time to keep them up to date, to house all that data, to make sure that they work in the future. There's just a lot to that. So we thought that the best decision would be to go to action minutes, and we'll continue to have our videos and stuff available. And there's going to be times where we can't do action minutes. For example, work sessions, you don't make decisions. So there's going to be summary minutes that we still do. But for a regular city commission meeting, when you make a lot of decisions, action minutes are very straightforward and helpful and can be turned around in a quick period of time.
So you raised, Mike, I was all good with that right up until the time you said that last item.
Okay.
So, because I look at the action minutes more like a library index card, so that a researcher going back and forth can look for the item that they're looking for, and then they can go find that video or whatever and watch it.
Right.
But now you're saying Westland's finding that they can't store all their video?
No. It's not cost effective. It's costing them more money because minutes are a permanent record, so we have to keep them forever.
Right.
And so they have changed their rules of procedure for their commission to say that their minutes are their audio and video recordings, and that they don't do written minutes of any kind. And they have since started to think that they're going to backtrack on that and want to work back to having some sort of written minutes as their permanent record, because over time, all of the data that's being stored up and taken up, it's going to cost them more money than if they were to keep a piece of paper or an electronic file that's smaller than a video.
I'm really confused now, because it would seem to me that data storage is much cheaper than, paper storage.
Well, they keep their papers electronically, excuse me. So an electronic written document versus an electronic video takes up a lot more space.
Well, sure.
So they're not doing both then, are they?
They are not doing both. They currently just have videos.
But they're thinking about
Doing written minutes.
written and
Yeah.
video?
I'm not sure on that one.
So I guess my question comes back to, right now, I don't know how far back, but I can go quite a ways back and look at city commission meetings, planning commission meetings. Are we talking about cutting that off at a certain point? Say you can only go back 2 years? Or are we talking about putting those on CDs and permanently storing them in city archives? Are we talking about, storing them on the cloud in
HP?
whatever? I don't know. So what is the...
Currently, I'm not talking about or proposing any changes to the videos that we have housed on our website now. We will continue to offer those videos, and we will continue to store them. If at some point...
Where are they stored at?
Currently, they are stored on a server, and
A physical server here in the building?
it might be a cloud server. It might be an electronic cloud. I'll have to find out from
Okay.
IT exactly. But that's not what I'm coming to you today, but it might be something that I come to you in the future. If it ever becomes a cost burden to us, that we might need to look at different options. Right now, there is the option of transferring them off of a server and putting them into our HP electronic records management system. Then again, we only get a certain amount of data space, until we get to a limit, and then once we get to that limit, we have to start paying above and beyond what we get with our contract.
We also have access to the state data farm, data server farms.
Archives, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and at this point, I'm not proposing any changes to our videos. We're going to keep our videos until I come to you and say that there's an issue with that. And at this point, I don't see an issue with that.
Because I really prefer the ability of people to come back. If we had a video of the meeting back when the water board was donating the land, to the city, it would be pretty handy to know exactly what those people had to say versus, people making, wild guesses as to what was going on at the time. So,
Right.
I think in 50 years, it would be good for people to be able to come back and see the discussions that we had about the Willamette Falls Legacy Project or about, whatever it might be. So I would always be in favor of keeping,
The videos?
videos or whatever they might be in the future, because, Occam's razor applies here.
Okay.
I think that, like I said before, I think the action minutes are just that library card that gets you to that particular video. And I don't see any reason not to be able to use those versus, summary minutes.
Okay, very good.
I'll join when you're ready.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not following my own rules here. Commissioner Shaw.
So who transcribes now, Katie? Is that done in the building? Do you contract that or?
We contract that out,
Okay,
and it's through my office, and we contract to a person who has done it for us for several years, and she does a fabulous job.
okay. So will there be any cost savings, by just going to the action? Because that's going to be quite a time savings for transcribing. There's Jay.
I was down and drove in late, so I thought I'd try to catch
Okay.
Catch you next time,
We'll
Jay.
catch you next time.
That's a great question. I will have to do a little bit more checking on that. See, the thing about it is that our transcriptionist does not transcribe all of our board and committee minutes. She only does a few. And I know that there is a burden on some of the staff that house the other boards and committees that she does not transcribe. And I'm looking at, now that we're going to summary minutes, that she might have the possibility of taking on all of our boards and committees and releasing staff of those duties, and so they can do other work that is necessary. There's still, with that, there still may be a little bit of cost saving. Honestly, she's very cost effective now. She does a very good job, way quicker than a lot of people can do it in. I mean, I've had staff tell me that they're spending, anywhere from, 10 hours a week to, depending on how long the meetings are and what the discussion is, they're spending a lot of time, and you're paying a lot of money for that staff person to transcribe those minutes, whereas this person does it for a really good, and does a really good job.
Commissioner Ide?
Several things. Did the law change as far as, I just remember something about that there was a requirement to have some kind of summary of the main discussion, or I remembered, and I was looking for that in there because I remember thinking, oh, if only that part wasn't in there.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
so,
no, there is,
can you go back to that slide?
yeah, sorry, I'm going to the wrong thing here.
Yeah, there.
Items discussed, that's kind of vague. There is something in there that, for the most part, most of these are pretty straightforward. The items discussed basically would be the agenda item would show up, and then maybe like a 1 or 2 sentence of what was discussed.
Okay.
But it wouldn't be as much as what the summary minutes are today.
Okay. I have no problem with action minutes with everything that, is required by law. My only thought is that oftentimes when you have land use items and there's, and something is appealed to LUBA, then LUBA likes all of the, language and, and I don't know if at that point, you could go back and do more if they need it.
That's all in the record.
Well, usually what happens in that case historically is we would have to go back anyway and have verbatim minutes are required for LUBA.
Oh, okay.
Or recently we've been able to utilize the video, and then if the appellant would like to transcribe the minutes, they can. So it's changed over the years, but even before when we were doing minutes, we would have to, if it got appealed to LUBA, we had to go get verbatim minutes anyway.
Okay.
So
Then I would be completely supportive of going to action minutes and keeping the video as permanent forever.
Yeah.
Whatever storage it would take, it's worth the cost.
Yeah.
I just want to say one funny thing is I can remember starting here was cassette tapes and VHS. And now we struggle to find a VHS player to look at the old plan. So it'll be interesting to see where we're at in 20 years.
Yeah.
With
Well,
technology.
when I first started, we just had cassette tapes.
True enough.
A virus.
No longer exists.
Commissioner Megaberg.
Are there ever committees that don't have the benefit of this taping system, that they're not videotaped? Like something that might be held at a library, for instance?
Yeah, there are times, but we've been fortunate to ask them to use an audio recording, and at least we have the audio recording of it. So I don't know that there has been a time where we haven't had either the video or the audio recording, to fall back on.
Okay. Because especially on policy discussions, it's very helpful in the future to understand the context instead of just the decision.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of good rationale and information that would inform the next commission as to make a good decision building on that instead of recreating the wheel and maybe misunderstanding and going in a different direction.
Yeah, to try to find the intent or.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and then you also asked us to comment on the time. How often do meetings go beyond 10 o'clock, percentage-wise, a year? Is it like 5%, 1%?
It depends on who's running the meeting. So in previous times and certain places, we had no issues with going overtime. And in other times, we've had people that don't know how to run a meeting and they go on a long, long time. So the point I made when I first came here to be mayor was that for myself, when I was getting up at 5:30 in the morning and going to work, working all day, and then coming here, starting at say 6 o'clock, and a meeting going until 11 or 12, I wasn't able to make good decisions. Now that never happened while I was mayor, but I know it happened to me in the past when I was on the commission, and I just think it's good policy to say that after a certain amount of time, people don't make good decisions anymore. Pilots can only fly a certain number of hours a day. Truck drivers can only drive a certain number of hours, at a time. Because of those kinds of things, reaction time, making good decisions, all that sort of thing. So obviously the decisions that we make here have great import to our community, and we are the people that make those decisions, whether it's us or the Planning Commission or Historic Review Board or whoever it is, should be making those, while they are rational and awake and, up to their best. So that's the reasoning behind it.
Well, and I was leaning more toward like 9 or 9:30. I think 10 is kind of late for people that are having to deal with traffic and get to work in
Well,
time.
the problem we run into there is that while, the last year or so, our agendas have been fairly light, now we're coming back into an economy that's booming, and we're going to have decisions to make, and so we have to allow for a number of items to be on the agenda. And so, while I try to keep those done, those meetings, moving along, there will be times when we need to go to 10 o'clock. I'm hoping we never have to even have the vote to go past 10 o'clock. But I think when we talked about this at the former commission, we had the discussion about where that time frame should be, and we felt that 10 o'clock was reasonable, as long as, the meetings were being run and we were getting things done efficiently. And I think we've all been pretty efficient over the last couple of years of, getting stuff accomplished, getting everybody's opinions said, and making decisions. So do we have a consensus? Oh, my computer is not updating Frank O'Donnell, and I'm not sure why. I get everybody else, but I don't get Frank. So, Commissioner O'Donnell?
Well, as one who frequently watches public meetings in an effort to be informed before I sit at commission, I've seen a number of things. I've seen the individual commissions drive the meetings late. I've seen the staff drive the meetings late. There's a moment I thought, well, maybe we should let the individual commissions decide, but I like the idea of capping it at a set time for the very reasons that you said, Mr. Mayor. I mean, fatigue does not yield good decisions.
You're right.
Quite honestly, I was not aware that anyone other than salary personnel attended those meetings. I didn't know we had hourly personnel attending them, so that's educational to me. More specifically, I want to speak to the action versus verbatim minutes based on my personal experience, mainly as a citizen. And I struggle with only the action meetings because in the absence of specifics of the discussion, what is lost is both the intent of the discussion and those moments when previous committee discussion became derailed. And as an example, I'll cite one that I was involved in as a citizen, that being membrane structures. An examination of the minutes, which we did in detail, showed that the real focus of that was not the structure itself, but debris and dumping and the accumulation of dangerous substances. But somehow it got misguided and went off their tracks, and all of a sudden it became about this structure. In the absence of being able to recover those kind of details, all you're left with is an action item. And even though I could lean in favor of the hybrid minutes, I definitely wouldn't lean in favor of action only. The question of the hybrid minute is, the minutes are interpreted through the eyes of the observer. And are they interpreted objectively or not? So, you know, I would make a motion more in favor of, not a motion, but I would favor hybrid minutes, definitely not action minutes only. In some ways that parallels your thoughts, Mayor, as being cataloged.
Well, yeah, but I guess what I'm saying there is that we are keeping a permanent, total, complete audio and video record. So if someone wants to go get that substance, they can access it and listen to the discussion and see the people's faces and all that.
That leads me to my next question.
Yes.
Currently, does the public have accessibility to all video and audio records?
They currently have accessibility to all the video records that we have, with the exception of there are some video records that were on VHS that we have not placed online, but they could always ask for that via public records request. And obviously executive session audio recordings are not available to the public.
So since we've been doing digital recording, we have all the city commission, all the planning commission, all the urban renewal commission, all the
Historic Review Board,
all of those, and those are all accessible online. I can go back as far back as
About 2008.
as far as 2008.
And again, my only problem with an action minutes only is, where does one glean the leaning, the discussion, the substance that led to that?
And that would be caught up in the video.
Well, there's no indication. I'd like to see at least like almost an executive summary in there so that the individual knows that, hey, this was the general idea of the discussion, not just the meeting, not just the action. And I think that's fair to everybody. I cannot go for action minutes only, but some, you know, I'm in the business world. I see executive summaries and then decisions. And I just feel that it's, in fairness to everybody, it'd be nice to know the tone of the meeting and the concerns, and even if it's in a much abbreviated form. That's it.
Mr. Hyde?
I understand your point of view, and I am sensitive to it. And I used to feel that way too, so that's why I can relate with you. But you know, having been in this business for many years, I saw that more and more and more became, more responsibilities came to into the city recorder's office. And when things went electronic, it just exploded in, you know, details and responsibilities. And when the videos became available, it almost was a relief, because it was the minutes were creating a burden, and this was statewide. I mean, everyone I talked to was saying the same thing, and it became a burden that, you know, it was like the ORS was putting a burden on cities to do all these minutes, and when it was finally solved through the video, and action minutes were then began, it was like a relief to city staff to be able to have both, to have the action minutes, because like you said, it's just a quick reference that has everything in it according to law, and then the video if you really want to get into the details. And I don't have any problems with the action as long as the videos are kept permanently.
I understand that position, but you understand how that relies on the electronic data being recoverable. And I think everybody in this room has had the experience where there's been a failure either on a recording or a video recording, and it leads us to other difficulties.
Except our system is a state-sponsored, you can explain it better. It's a system that is the state, when we contracted with the state.
Of course, the state's never screwed up any software issues.
But they have so many backups that, I mean, I've actually toured. I have toured through the building in Baker City and saw, I mean, it was phenomenal. There is,
So the amount of redundancy is such that the system is fail-safe? Is that what you're saying?
It is DoD certified, Department of Defense certified.
It is.
And it has to be recertified each year.
I've actually worked on the server farm there, and so typically it's triple redundancy. So the data exists in 3 separate places inside the facility. Each of those 3 separate places are separately fire alarmed, air conditioned, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, it's as foolproof as you can get, minus a direct hit by a nuclear weapon or, the earth opening and swallowing it whole.
Well, I'll still maintain that there should be some minimal executive summary as to the tone of the meeting. I don't think that's too much to ask in just addition to the action minutes.
Yeah, we currently do summary minutes. So my proposed change was to change it from summary to action and keep the videos for a backup if they needed to.
What the hybrid form is a summary minute, right?
And that's what we currently do.
So
we
you do
currently
have the tone of the meeting and the general text of the discussion?
Yes, but I'm asking to move from summary minutes to action minutes.
Oh, okay.
Commissioner Megaberg?
So what about advisory committees like the Transportation Task Force and the Beaver Creek Road Task Force that has a lot of rich information and discussion from the community? Are those videotaped and recorded as well for posterity or not?
No.
Most of those are not. We have recorded some in the past. Most of those are usually done by a consultant. Usually a consultant is hired to do something, and then they do a public outreach, or they get a committee together. And the information that comes forward to you guys is coming from either staff or that consultant.
So they're required to do the minutes?
And they're required to reflect to you what has come out of the discussions, what's been the executive summary of those meetings.
The difference is that, say, for instance, the alternative mobility standards meetings are not technically public meetings under the definition of minutes, because they're not decision makers. They're not decision makers.
Yeah. Yep.
Anybody else? So I think you have a consensus to bring us something back forward in a regular commission meeting as far as resolution or whatever.
Quick update from Mr. Lewis.
Quick and Mr. Lewis together in the same sentence?
John Lewis, yeah.
Mr. John Lewis, of course. Phil Lewis would be all night long.
We'd be here all night.
So actually, Tony asked me to give you an update on Main Street. So Katie, if you could bring up there's just some graphics that I wanted to show you for traffic control. But Main Street we're scheduled to do some, or we're not, but a contractor is under contract to do some work on Main Street, really between the between 99E and 6th Street. So many of you are, this is kind of a long-standing project. I know it's one of the favorites of the mayor to remove the railroad tracks from the spur line that's been for years used by the mill. And that spur line has a tendency to fail, especially in 99E. And so the state's interested in removing it from 99E, as is Union Pacific Railroad. And we're interested in that, as well as removing the section from 99E to 6th Street, basically. So that rail spur that dead ends there. So this is a joint project between ODOT, Union Pacific, the city, and we haven't, but the state has hired S2 Contracting, who has done the last 2 years of our paving projects. So good contractor. They're basically going to do it jointly. Union Pacific is going to remove the track, and then S2 is going to move in behind them and repair the street. So I guess one of the big pieces is traffic control to that, because it's going to be an upset to our routine. One of the ways to mitigate that is they're going to actually close the Oregon City Westland Bridge during the period of time that they're working on this project. So they start this project Friday night at 8 p.m. and they're going to work through the weekend and finish it by Sunday at 8 p.m. So that effort will require all traffic that's coming over the bridge from West Lynn to use I-205 and come across through the 99E junction. And if you want to go, they still are going to allow traffic to move what would be northbound from Oregon City to West Lynn, but it's the traffic that comes down the bridge into Oregon City that they have to close because it's not a good route for that, all that volume of traffic. So the first phase of the project will start Friday. They're going to work on really what would be the north half of the 99E crossing. So they're going to kind of cut it right in the center of the lane and start digging north on Main Street and removing all that track. And they're going to do that most of the night. And they think they can get all the way to 6th Street with the removal. And then S2 is going to come in right behind them and pave that section. They're going to work most of Saturday. And then Saturday night, they're going to remove the other half of of the track that's in 99E, so the south side. So I guess I should have flipped through these. So this is the first night set up. They'll basically be out in 99E removing the track. They're going to progress into this kind of a mode where they're going to affect traffic that's needing to move through Main Street. They're going to have to occupy a little bit of that block between 6th and 7th, but they're still going to allow traffic to go north and south on Main Street. And they're going to be working tirelessly on fixing Main Street between 99E and 6th. And then the next night, so they'll continue working. UP will come back in on call, essentially, and when they're ready to go, and they're going to move the traffic control over and start working on that last half of 99E crossing and have it all finished by Sunday. So very disruptive, I get that. We've done some outreach through mostly ODOT's social media as it was suggested, and we agreed made sense. We've reached out to West Lynn and Canby and TriMet and emergency services as well. So there's also reader boards out there, and it's kind of a tough message to deliver in a reader board fashion, but it definitely lets people know that the bridge is going to be closed and Main Street's going to be closed. So keeping our fingers crossed that everything goes as planned.
So I assume you've been down, or somebody from staff's been down to talk to each of the retail business owners in that stretch? And
So we've been through that once already, just to let them know. We originally had intended to start this on Thursday, but the weather forecast is not solid enough for starting on Thursday. So tomorrow morning, we're going to go out yet again and give them another update on schedule.
And that included Downtown Association, Jonathan?
Yes.
Okay. And did you say that what time on Friday? And you're talking about this Friday?
This Friday, 8 p.m.
8 a.m.?
PM.
8 p.m.
PM. So during the day, it's open yet?
Yeah,
Okay.
but it will be closed during the day on Saturday and most of Sunday.
Okay.
Won't be back open. There's their
Well, they'll be allowing,
schedule shows.
there'll be traffic going on 99. You're not closing 99 completely at Main Street.
Right, no, just Main Street. So 99 will allow flag traffic in each direction. Yeah, it'll just be one lane in each direction, so.
Have we heard from the Friends of the Railroad Tracks yet, or?
They're on the historic shore.
Don't invite Murphy into this conversation.
We have not.
I mean, how old are those tracks, Joe?
Those are new tracks.
Moving on, was that your last slide?
Yep.
Okay. Anything else? Go to the order, we're adjourned.
Gee.